Hello and welcome to another 642 Tiny Things to Draw update. I have not touched this book in like a month. Our first doodle is nesting dolls, so I have 4 of them all gathered together, and I wanted to make the smaller dolls younger and the bigger dolls older, so you'll see that the little tiny one is a little baby, and then you get like adult and then elderly. This is all done with Shuttle Art acrylic paint markers, and I made their little ties metallic because why not give them some flair? Once I put down all the base color, I started freehanding different designs on each of the dolls, and then I gave it a little bit of shading with graphite. And of course a white line of highlight because dolls are typically very shiny because of like plastic or gloss or whatever. And then I outlined in Micron and fucked up the second doll's face. It looks so derpy. We're gonna ignore that. Not gonna lie, I did not try super hard on this doodle because I blanked on how to go about it, but it came out kind of cute. So here it is finished, and now we have the narrowest part of an hourglass, and I'm gonna do this one black and white. So I'm scribbling down graphite over the whole page and blending that out with my finger to have a base shade, and now I'm adding in darker shading. For highlights, I erased the graphite, and then I outlined everything with Micron. I filled in the back solid black with Micron, and I added in some even darker shadows with Micron. I stippled over the whole sand bit with, you guessed it, Micron, to give it that sandy texture. All those tiny little grains of sand. And then for greater highlight, I added a little bit of white acrylic paint. There's not a lot to say about this one. It's pretty straightforward, but I do enjoy the high contrast. And now we have nose rings. I went really simple with this one and gave it my piercing setup with the septum ring and the nostril piercings on both sides, and I really flippin' love when there's the chain going between the 2 nostril rings, so I gave it that as well. I colored it in a violet-y kind of color, this pinky reddish color, and then used graphite and blue for shadows. I like how my shadows came out. I think that color combination looks really cool, and this is Loft colored pencils that I am using to color in this doodle right now. I used white acrylic paint marker for some exaggerated highlights on the nose, and I also filled in the rings with acrylic paint marker as well. Obviously, I'm filling them in metallic silver because metal is shiny. And I used white to highlight that as well. Here, that is all finished, and now we are drawing pool chalk. I was not excited to draw this one at all. This is so boring. We have a cube that I am coloring in with a light blue Loft colored pencil, and for the shadowing on that little divot in the chalk, like where you put the pool stick, with graphite, all of the shadows are done with graphite, and then I blotted a bit of acrylic paint at the bottom for the chalk dust, which does not read very well because it's kind of too dark and hard edges, so that doesn't really work. And then I tried to soften it by going over the whole area with colored pencil, which helped a little bit, but not really. Also, that is garbage lighting. I thought I did better. Anyway, moving on. Now we have a coat hook. I was listening to a horror story while I was drawing this, and those horror elements kind of leaked over into the doodle by making it all scribbly and drippy, but you know what? I like it. It's a vibe. I put down a layer of graphite first. I colored in the fabric and the hook with the same color light brown, and now I'm using graphite to very sketchily outline and sketchily scribble shade everything. Looking at this now, I don't think that fabric is big enough to be a coat. That looks really fucking thin compared to the hook, but you know what? It doesn't have to be a coat. Anything could be hanging on this hook. I added a little bit of highlight lines at the end with acrylic paint marker, and here it is all finished. It looks really scratchy and dark and creepy, and I am here for it. Here we have the reflections of a disco ball. I took some creative liberties with this one and went more simplistic, inspired than like direct disco ball reflections. So obviously I have a little disco ball in the corner, which I am shading with a mechanical pencil, and then I filled in the entire background black with Micron. I filled in a few of the squares on the disco ball with a white acrylic paint marker by the brand Shuttle Art, and then I used that same acrylic paint marker to make the reflections in the background. In a lot of the reference photos I was looking at, the reflections that were closest to the ball were small little dots, and then as they got farther away from the ball, they got more elongated and thicker, so I tried to replicate that. And then I got this really cool radial pattern, and that does look like simplified light refractions. I'm happy with this. Then to jazz this up a little bit more, I took a glittery silver gel pen by the brand Grabie, and I outlined a few sections of the disco ball and also added a line of glittery silver into each of the light reflections to make it shiny because, you know, disco balls are very reflective and therefore shiny. I think this came out really cool. Now we have a bus transfer, and I don't really know what that is, so I'm just drawing a bus ticket. I figured that was close enough. I went very simplified and cartoonish with this one because I didn't really feel like drawing that day, so I added a little bit of shading with graphite, and now I'm coloring everything in with Loft colored pencils. I do like my stupid little bus drawing on the ticket. I think that came out cute. I darkened the corners with graphite and a darker shade of brown, and then I called it done, and wow, that is a really shitty photo. I thought going outside for these pictures would give me better lighting, but apparently not. Anyway, now we have a disposable razor. I did not plan this one out at all. I completely freehanded the whole thing, and that is why it is so fucking tiny and doesn't fit the page very well. I should have sketched this out first. Obviously, I'm using watercolor. This is by the brand Artecho, and I used metallic silver watercolor paint for the blade, just to, give it a little zhuzh, because, as I've been saying, metal is shiny. I added a bit of red to the outer edges of the page just to give it more visual interest because, again, this razor does not fill up the page very well. Here I am outlining in Micron and giving it some very haphazard scribbly shading. I also used a bit of colored pencil to shade it as well. Here it is done. It's not good, and now we have a fuse, and this is a fucking repeat! Literally the exact same prompt was way earlier in the book, and that's what that photo on the right is. Welp, I gotta make these two things different. So for starters, I am using watercolor instead of Micron. And this one will be in color, so I am using a very light gray blue to shade the inside of the glass. I'm using grays and blacks to shade the edges of the fuse. I used a dull purple for the background because I thought that color would look nice against the gray and the blue. I added more shading with graphite, and then I somewhat sketchily outlined and added even deeper shadows with Micron. And then for funsies, I made the little line inside the fuse. Honestly, I don't know what the hell that thing is, but I used a glittery yellow gel pen to fill in that line because fuses have something to do with electricity, so I thought glittery yellow would be a perfect little nod to electric. Here it is finished. I think it came out pretty cute, and now we have a ship in a bottle. I definitely strayed from the traditional idea of this object. I thought we could have a super tiny ship in a big ol' storm. I did not try very hard on the ship part because I do not know how to draw ships, especially from this angle. I was having extreme difficulty, so I figured, okay, we're just gonna do a really simplified little ship and call it done. We're gonna focus on the waves. So obviously I'm using a couple different shades of dark blue, green colors of watercolor. The tips of the waves, I added more blue to lighten it up because tips of waves are thinner, therefore lighter. When the paint dried, I came back in with colored pencil to deepen those shadows and fade out the blue a bit better. Everything is outlined in Micron as per usual. For the rumbliness of the waves, I used a gray, a dark green, and a white acrylic paint marker and dotted over the edges of the waves with it. And in my head, I thought that would work really well to give you that white cap rumbliness, but in reality, it did not work the way I thought it would. I think the highlight lines look good with the white marker, but the crashing of the waves doesn't read as well with the paint. And I don't know how else I was supposed to go about that though. This one was difficult to draw. I don't think I have ever drawn water like this before, so this was a challenge, but I'm happy with the end result. I think it came out good enough. Here's the final doodle, and that concludes the 642 Tiny Things to Draw update. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see more of me, then click the link in the description box, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!